Today I'll be talking about the periodic table. The periodic table is just a big grid of all of the elements that scientists know about so far. It looks like this. All of the individual squares represent a single element. Let's zoom in on a square. The big letters in the center are an abbreviation for the name of the element. For this square, the SI is an abbreviation for silicon. The actual name of the element is shown in tiny letters just below the abbreviation. At the top of the square, there's a number. That number is just the number of protons in the element. But at the bottom of the square, there's also a number, and that number is the number of AMUs of the element. AMUs are basically just a way of measuring the mass of atoms and molecules. The little squares are divided into rows and columns. The rows are called periods, and the columns are called groups. When you go across a period and down a group, the elements get heavier. Hydrogen is the lightest element, and it's all the way at the top left. Meanwhile, ununoctium is the heaviest element, and it's all the way at the bottom right of the periodic table. And that big chunk of squares at the bottom? That chunk is supposed to go over there, but if it did, the periodic table would be way too wide to easily display. The reddish squares are alkali metals. Alkali metals are soft, and they react easily with a lot of elements. Sodium is an alkali metal. The slightly less reddish squares are lanthanoids. Lanthanoids are soft, silvery white, rare earth metals, metals that are highly abundant in the Earth's crust, that are highly reactive. Lanthanum is a lanthanoid. The slightly more reddish ones are actinoids, which are all radioactive. Plus, most of them are man-made. Plutonium is an actinoid. Uranium is also an actinoid, but it's not man-made, unlike the other actinoids. The orange squares are alkaline earth. Alkaline earth metals are like alkali metals, but they're slightly less reactive, and they're slightly tougher. Calcium is an alkaline earth metal. The yellow squares are transition metals. Transition metals are elements that, when put in a compound, lose many different amounts of electrons. Gold is a transition metal. The slightly more greenish squares are semi-metal. Semi-metals are elements that have properties that are a mixture between metals and non-metals. Silicon is a semi-metal. The even more greenish squares are non-metal. Carbon is a non-metal. The blue squares are basic metals. Basic metals are metals that are not rare or valuable. Lead is a basic metal. The bluish-green squares are halogens. Halogens are elements that make salts when put in a compound. Chlorine is a halogen. And the light blue squares are noble gases. Noble gases are gases that are not very reactive. Helium is a noble gas.